Imagine a new piece of evidence, hidden for decades, that could shatter everything you thought you knew about the Adnan Syed case. What if new alibi information surfaced today that wasn't available during his trial? We're diving deep into the details of this potentially game-changing evidence, and you won't believe how it could reshape the narrative. The lingering shadow of Hae Min Lee. The original case. A quick recap. On January 13th, 1999, Hae Min Lee, a bright and driven 18-year-old senior at Woodlawn High School in Baltimore County, vanished without a trace. Nearly a month later, her partially buried body was discovered in Leakin Park. She had been strangled to death. Authorities quickly turned their attention to her ex-boyfriend, Adnan Syed, then just 17 years old. He had no prior criminal record, no history of violence, and by all accounts was a well-liked student and devout Muslim. But one critical thing worked against him: the testimony of an acquaintance named Jay Wilds. Jay told police that Adnan had confessed to the murder and that he helped him bury Hae's body. Jay's timeline, though inconsistent and riddled with contradictions, became the backbone of the prosecution's case. Combined with cell tower data that supposedly corroborated Jay's version of events, Syed was convicted of first-degree murder, kidnapping, robbery, and false imprisonment in 2000. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. But even from the beginning, questions swirled. There was no physical evidence linking Syed to crime. No DNA, no fingerprints. Just a shaky witness account and cell phone pings that experts would later argue were misused. The serial phenomenon, how a podcast reignited public interest. Fast forward to 2014. Sarah Koenig, a journalist with This American Life, launched the podcast Serial. Its premise was simple: revisit a case with lingering questions and try to understand what really happened. Week by week, millions of listeners were drawn into the complicated timeline, the inconsistencies in Jay Wild's statements, and a troubling realization: Adnan Syed may have been wrongly convicted. But perhaps the most explosive revelation from the podcast was the existence of an alibi witness who had been entirely overlooked during the original trial. The new alibi evidence that changed everything. Who is Asia McClain? Her name is Asia McClain. She was a fellow student at Woodlawn High, and according to her, she saw Adnan in the school library on the very afternoon Hae Min Lee was murdered, January 13th, 1999, between 2:15 and 2:45 p.m. That's critical because it was during this window that prosecutors argued Adnan killed Hae and began disposing of her body. Asia wrote 2 letters to Adnan shortly after his arrest in 1999. In those letters, she offered to testify about seeing him in the library. She even spoke to his defense attorney, Cristina Gutierrez. But for reasons never fully explained, Gutierrez never followed up, and Asia was never called to testify. For years, her testimony sat in silence until Serial brought her forward. Her potential alibi, if credible, would have created reasonable doubt and could have changed the outcome of the trial. The legal fallout, from appeal to exoneration, ineffective counsel, and new hearings. In 2016, a Baltimore judge granted Syed a new trial, citing ineffective assistance of counsel because Gutierrez failed to investigate McClain's alibi. But the victory was short-lived. In 2019, Maryland highest court reinstated Syed's conviction, arguing that even if Asia had testified, it wouldn't have changed the verdict. Syed remained in prison. Yet public interest, fueled by Serial and later HBO's The Case Against Adnan Syed, never waned. The DNA breakthrough and reinvestigation, 2022. In 2022, following new Maryland laws that encouraged a review of juvenile convictions, Baltimore prosecutors launched a new investigation. This time, they re-examined forensic evidence with modern DNA testing. The results? No DNA evidence matched Adnan Syed. Even more shocking, investigators identified 2 alternative suspects, people who had previously threatened to harm Hae Min Lee, but this information had never been disclosed to Syed's defense, a violation of Brady disclosure laws. September 2022, conviction vacated. On September 19, 2022, Judge Melissa Finn vacated Adnan Syed's conviction. In a packed courtroom, Syed was unshackled and released after 23 years in prison. This wasn't a declaration of innocence, but rather an acknowledgement that the original conviction was deeply flawed. October 2022, charges dropped. Just weeks later, on October 11th, 2022, Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby formally dropped all charges against Syed. The DNA tests, lack of evidence, and withheld alternative suspect information made it impossible to move forward. Syed, now 41, was a free man. The fight for exoneration isn't over. While Syed is no longer behind bars, his record is not yet fully cleared. Legal advocacy groups continue to push for full exoneration, which would acknowledge that the state wrongfully convicted him. In 2023, the Maryland Appellate Court controversially ruled that Hae Min Lee's family had not been given adequate notice before the hearing to vacate the conviction. The court ordered a new hearing, though it did not reinstate Syed's conviction. The bigger picture, justice, system failures, and the power of persistence. The Adnan Syed case isn't just about one man. It highlights major flaws in the American justice system, the danger of relying solely on circumstantial evidence, the devastating impact of ineffective legal counsel, the importance of transparency and full disclosure by prosecutors, and how public pressure and journalism can expose buried truths. But most of all, it shows that even after decades, the truth has a way of surfacing, especially when someone, somewhere, refuses to stop asking questions. The new Alibi from Asia McClain wasn't just a footnote. It was a spark, a piece of the puzzle that unraveled years of silence and injustice. It took nearly 2 decades for it to be taken seriously, but when it helped catalyze a movement that led to Syed's release. The question now is, will the system ever fully admit its mistake? And what about the other cases out there, still waiting for someone to listen